I'm Davy, and I'm awesome! And welcome to Davy's Awesome Stories, where I tell funny stories from my past or go on a rant in an effort to make you laugh. So last week's video, trying to be smart, I did talk about how I don't really care much for smartphones. I think they're making a bunch of people dumber. And it did spark some arguments this week, so I've got to admit, there are good things about smartphones, there are god-awful things about smartphones. So I'm going to go through a few pros and a few cons of the smartphones. One pro I will give the smartphone is when you break down. Something that, let's just face it, is going to happen to every one of us once in a while. You're going to break down on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere. Well, before the invention of this, that really sucked when it happened. Because now you got a phone, you can just call somebody and be like, yeah, I broke down. I'm in the middle of nowhere. Come get me. And with a smartphone, there's an extra added thing. Even if you don't have cell phone reception where you are, pretty much all of these now come standard with data. So you can always get on your Facebooks or your Twits or your Instagrams and your snapping chats, your TikToks, whatever, and you can message people through that and go, hey, I'm broken down in the middle of nowhere. Last town I passed was this one. Just keep following it. Please come save me before a hillbilly rapes me. And eventually that person will get a message. Basically, there's always ways to contact people on these. So that's really cool. Because back then, yeah, if you broke down on the side of the road, you and whoever you're with had to argue about who wants to walk all the way to a gas station or flag somebody down. Either way, which one of you is going to risk getting slaughtered by a maniac? But now a con to these, in my opinion, is directions. Yes, it's kind of cool that each one of these now has like a free app you can get. Whether it's GPS or Waze or whatever, there's something you can download. A lot of them are free, and it will tell you step by step where to go. Versus back in my day, if you didn't know where it was, you either had to get a map, which I will admit, a lot of people nowadays love to go like, people nowadays have forgotten how to read maps. We used to use maps everywhere we went. When the truth is, no we didn't. Most of us did not use maps. The only people who used maps were people who had to travel for a living and drive all over. They had to learn how to read a map. The rest of us, even though it would have been very beneficial, still did not learn how to read a map. No, most of us just went with asking directions. Like if we never had been to the place, we'd ask somebody who knew, like, hey, how do you get there? They'd tell you, you'd write it down, and then if you were on the way because they gave you terrible directions, you could pull over and ask somebody, and pretty much anybody who worked at a gas station was like a freaking genius of directions. Like they could give you the most ridiculously great directions you could ever get. Like you'd go in and say, excuse me, I'm lost, I'm trying to get here, can you tell me how to get there? Oh yeah, here's what you're going to do. You're going to go 3 clicks down that way, and then you're going to take a right on Smith Street. You're going to go down Smith Street for about a half a mile, take a right on Steinware Street. About the 2.7 mile mark, you're going to see a mailbox that has a shoe on it. Now the shoe is not attached to the mailbox, it's just sitting there. It's a red Nike shoe that they will not take off this mailbox for some reason. Go past there for another 0.7 miles, take a left on Anderson, and it's about 3 miles down. But what I actually hate about all these GPS apps and stuff is they do get confusing sometimes. Like first of all, you'll turn, and they won't tell you until it's too late, stay left. Yeah, now I'm stuck in traffic, I'm in the right lane, and I'm having to really push my way over to the left. And then they'll do things that, for most of us, let's just face it, just confuses us. Stuff like, in 0.7 miles, turn right. I don't know how far 0.7 miles is. You're just confusing me. Can you just make it easier and be like, hey, dummy, at the next street, turn right. Thank you. Not to mention for me personally, the worst thing is when it's giving you the directions and you mess up and you go too far or you go down the wrong street or you just simply can't find the place even though you're on the street. I don't have anybody else to blame but me. Even though, yes, in that moment I am not too good to yell at this inanimate object, I have to accept that really the fault is me because I didn't understand the directions that this thing was giving me and now I'm the idiot. Versus back in the day, we could always find something to nitpick about their directions and make it their fault. Like we get there late and go, yeah, actually me being late is your fault. You told me to look for the blue sign. That sign is clearly teal. Another pro to the phones, though, I will give is when it comes to babysitters. When I was a kid, way before I was legally allowed to go work at a place, yeah, I did some babysitting. around 12, 13 years old. There was a few couples I'd babysit for, made some money. But the thing is, back then, people did not have cell phones. So the best the couple whose kids you were watching could do was go, okay, here's the numbers to where we're going to be in case it's an emergency. Which I will say, as a couple now, that kind of put pressure on them because sometimes when I do have a date night with my wife, we decide out of nowhere, hey, let's go do this. That would be fun. They didn't have that luxury back then because if you as a couple decided to go do something random, you just knew that was the moment that Michael Myers was breaking into your house. But now it's, you got my cell phone, if you need something, call me, which is also easy on the babysitter. Because as somebody was in their position, you had to really determine what was an emergency. Because you didn't want to call if it wasn't an emergency. Like if they were at a restaurant, let's forget the fact that trying to call somebody who was at a restaurant, a customer, was a pain in the butt. You'd call and it would be like, hello, random restaurant, how can I help you? Yeah, I'm looking for some customers, the Johnsons. Give me just a moment while I go check the restaurant, thank you. Then you'd sit there waiting for 30 minutes while they went and checked the restaurant. Meanwhile, the kids are still doing crap, and remember, you're on a landline phone. Like, I don't even have one to use as a prop anymore. So you're sitting there like, come on, answer the phone. Hey, don't do that. Don't do that to your brother. Don't do that. Don't do that. Just stop doing things longer than the cord reaches. And that's if you were even going to bother, because you didn't want to do that for a couple of reasons. Because another reason you didn't want to do that is because, did this constitute a good enough emergency to do this? Because if this wasn't a good enough emergency, you might not get hired again. You might just upset them. So you had to sit there and debate with yourself, do I really need to call them? There's nothing they can really do. That eye is not going back in the socket. Now, the good thing is I never had that kind of an emergency where I did actually need to call them. But sometimes I had little emergencies and they would always ask, why didn't you just call us? Why? Because your kid being a smart mouth and not listening was not a good reason to sit there and wait 30 minutes for some maitre d' who's already irritated with me to go look for you. But now, from the position I'm in the couple, the babysitter can contact us. They can call us and say, hey, this one's not listening. We can get on the phone and yell at them and be like, hey, you're going to be grounded when I get home if you don't knock it off. Or even things like, hey, baby, she says she's having trouble finding the diapers. Oh, no. I bought some diapers, but I forgot to take them into the house. They're in the back of our car. Oh, so she has no diapers. No. Gotcha. Yeah, so apparently we got the diapers with us, and our food just came. So here's what you're going to do. Go to the very back of my closet. In the very back, there's a dark blue Bob's Big Boy shirt. It's too small for me now. I don't wear it anymore. Just wrap that around them until we get home, okay? Back then, you couldn't do that. But now the con of this is like being on a date night, and people won't stop texting or calling you. Like, I'll give my wife this. She's very good about that. She's not one of those people that you're sitting there trying to talk to and she's just looking at her cell phone the entire time, ignoring you. By the way, if you are one of those people, I want you to understand, I truly hate you. No, she's not like that, but we're on a date. We don't know if it's the babysitter or something. So, yeah, randomly she has to check her phone. So, yeah, when somebody texts or calls, she looks, and if it's not the babysitter, she'll ignore it. Unless it's her mom or sister. Which is what leads to this con, because, little side note, my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law, they have no consideration. They don't care. My wife will tell them we're on a date, and that doesn't stop them. If my wife does not answer, they will just immediately call back. Again and again and again and again and again and again. One time her phone was going off near me, and I just kept ignoring it, until finally after the 5th time I finally answered and went, she's in the shower, will you freaking stop? They are those people. They got something they got to talk about. They got to talk about now. And no, it doesn't help when my wife tries to text them. Davy and I are on a date. Is this an emergency? It's useless to do that because they'll tell you it's important. And then it'll be something like, oh my god, I just saw this pink Disney princess cup. It is so cute. I just had to buy it for you. I really wish I was exaggerating, but to them, that's an emergency. Back when we didn't have these, most people didn't know where you were. So people didn't disturb you. If you got disturbed, you understood it was an emergency. Or you didn't hire that babysitter again. Which brings me to the final pro and con. In a sense, it's a pro that people can get a hold of you a lot easier with cell phones nowadays. They're usually on you. And most people know that if you don't answer, probably means you're just in a situation where you can't answer right now. Like you're at work or you're asleep. Most people know that. That is both a pro and a con. Whereas, yeah, it's nice because, oh, let me see what's going on. Yeah. Oh, cool. But back in the days when we didn't have the cell phones, sometimes we'd screen our calls. The answering machine would pick up, and it would be somebody we didn't want to talk to right now, so we would just ignore it. But now, that person you don't want to talk to calls, it's kind of hard to ignore it. Because they know you have a phone. They know it's with you. And the fact that you're not calling them back is pissing them off. Back then they had to accept maybe they're not home. Not only that, but when they left a message on the machine, machines used to mess up. So you could make that excuse. Hey, why didn't you call me back? I never got it. Somebody must have checked the messages and erased it. Versus now, you didn't answer, so they texted you, hey, call me when you get a chance. Or they left a voicemail. So when the question, why didn't you call me back, came, you kind of have to admit your own faults. Yeah, I checked the voicemail, but it was late, so I wasn't able to call you back right away, and I'm so stupid and absent-minded that if I don't call you back right away, I'm going to forget for 3 weeks. So yeah, in some ways these things do make our lives better, but in a lot of ways, they're hurting us because we're ridiculously dependent on them. So there you have it. That's my story video this week. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, make sure to hit like, hit subscribe, hit that little bell so you get notifications for when I post new videos, and leave a comment. Give me some pros and cons of cell phones. Love you guys.